Coming into this project, what did you just have like a list of all the different key numbers that they currently had, and then you just knew right away, like let's say you had 40 different numbers you were looking at, or percentages, or and then you wrote next to them like what they should be, and then you work towards that? Or can you kind of take us through that evaluation process of when the fire that you came into, and how you put out the fire, and kind of started looking at it more analytically?
Yeah, so you have to go through the P&L. You have to look at what all your fixed costs are, the things that you can't affect, and you kind of have to build your model from there. You have to take 100%. It's 100% minus what your costs are, and whatever when you get down to your variables, you just have to say, okay, I have my fixed costs are going to be, which are typically 25 to 30%, depending on what your business looks like. Then all of your controllable costs come in, which in our industry we call it prime costs typically, not counting your disposables and such like that. Those are also controllable, but and you have to build your model. Based on that. And when there's numbers that are way out of line, and typically your prime cost, which is cost of goods, cost of your food and your alcohol and drinks and such like that, plus your labor costs is what equals prime costs. Old school thought was prime costs had to be under 65%. Now, with all of the additional fees and how CAM has gone up and such like that, people need to target closer to 55%. It's tough to get to 55%, but if you can get below 60, you have a chance. You start riding above 60, it's going to be pretty hard to operate. We run here. The labor was way out of control here. The food cost was really out of control. They were running 42% food costs. So they were running almost 80% of their cost was just in prime costs, which is not sustainable. And they'd done that for a year. They lost $500,000 the first year of business here. So the first thing you have to do is you have to stop the flow of each one of those things. If you're close on those numbers, you have to go analyze every single thing that comes into your building, and create systems, SOPs in place so that the things that you don't touch every day have a mandate of how the people who do touch them order, produce them, price them, such like that. And that's really all there is to it. Sometimes when you walk into a place like this that has a structural problem, you have to come up with some bigger solutions, like we did with the self-tap system here. Sometimes you have to get creative if the business model is broken and your prime cost is in line. Then you have to look at some other solutions. So
Nice.
It's just people in this industry are very creative people generally, and you give them the puzzle in front of them and just say, okay, this works, this doesn't. Come up with a creative way to fix this doesn't.
Jim, can I ask you if you can go in more detail regarding the staff cost? What were you doing besides the beer wall to kind of reduce that?
Well, the kitchen was out of line. The top line was also broken, which your percentage of your sales are always fixed by having your top line sales increase. So we increased sales by 400,000, which was 17%. So that made that helps with it. But there were no tools in place for projecting labor. The biggest thing with labor is you have to budget to a percentage. You can't or a fixed dollar amount per week. You have to give that to your scheduling managers and tell them, look, you have $1,700 to spend on front of the house labor this week, and that's it. And you have to project. You have to say, I'm going to do $50,000 in sales next week, and whatever your percentage number is, you have to tell that manager, here's how much you have to spend for the week. If we start having a slow night, you got to cut people out, and then you got to try and make those numbers, break it down day by day, and they have to schedule to it. If you give them 17.2% and they write a schedule that's 17.3, you got to go to them and say, you got to cut 0.1% out of your schedule. If you don't schedule that way, you'll never make your labor. And that's so having the tools to look forward instead of just looking back is a really important piece of controlling your labor. Otherwise, you're just reacting instead of being proactive.
That makes sense.
And then having the rules in place that, hey, look, if we're slow, you got to have somebody that's assigned to go around and say, okay, you're done for the day, go home, and go home right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a hard thing for some people to do, especially for some managers. You know, and you're concerned about cutting the hours for certain people, things like that. But your job is to maintain jobs for everybody, not just for one individual.
Absolutely.
There was a question across that as well. What's your kind of benchmark for labor costs, like percentage of revenue, and food cost percentage of revenue?
Typical restaurants, I try and benchmark 32%. We run just a little bit below that for food costs here, partly because of the volume. But we put a lot of food on the plate. I would actually like when I wrote the menu for this place, I wrote it to 27%. But then we decided to add 1.5 pounds of tater tots on with the burger and stuff like that. So we became known for big portions, and it's part of our success here. You know, we don't buy a lot of prepared foods. We do a lot of chef touched foods here in a brewery setting. So our food is better, and we're known for that. So we run a couple of points higher than I would like to run here, but 32% is, it's hard to make in better food establishments. If you're running things that are a little simpler, or pizza or something like that, you can run a little lower. Labor, I always try and get total labor when I start building a model. I start with 25% and try and go down from there. With a lot of what's happening with minimum wages and stuff like that, it's hard to make those numbers now. And you have to be creative about how you do tip share and how you staff your front door. You know, for example, here at Stanley Beer Hall, everybody that's in the front of the house is in the tip pool. So I have nothing but servers, and everybody rotates through the position. So in our location, people that work at the front door are part of the server staff and part of the tip pool. So everybody knows how to do everything. Your level of service goes up because you don't have somebody that doesn't know how to do something for somebody having any contact with your guests. Every time a guest asks a question, every server knows how to do everything. And I've been lucky here because of the model we brought in. Our staff does very well. So with the exception of 2 people, everybody that's on my staff right now has been here for the 2.5 years that I've been here. I'm very, nice. Very lucky. So, and it's you know, it's not because of me. It's because they're making good money because of the self-pour system. They get to leverage how much money they make because they only have to serve half of what they're getting tipped on.